everyone. With this year's high fashion photo Met Gala, we wanted to dive further into our theme, Faces in the Mirror, Fashion and the Horror of Identity, by taking a closer look into horror's impact on fashion. We've selected three fashion shows to analyze in order to do this. The second show we'll be looking at is Jun Takahashi's Fall Winter 2019 menswear collection for Undercover. In this collection, Takahashi blurred the lines of time, combining the gothic seriousness of Edgar Allan Poe with the dystopian world of Stanley Kubrick's 1971 film A Clockwork Orange in order to create an atmosphere rife with unease. Though each of these three shows are incredibly distinct, all three of them explore the self-reflective nature of horror through the lens of fashion, which is exactly what today is all about. We really hope you enjoy our conversations about these beautiful collections.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Undercover Fall Winter 2019 menswear collection by Jun Takahashi, which was inspired by the Edgar Allan Poe theory of him being a time traveler, the Three Musketeers, and more obviously, the 1971 Stanley Kubrick film, A Clockwork Orange.
When creating the sub-theme of exploring the self, the movie A Clockwork Orange was the first one that came to mind. Both the film and the novel are a dystopian tale of the dissonance between utter lawlessness and complete governmental control through state-administered psychiatry.
About the title of the novel and the movie, author Anthony Burgess said, A Clockwork Orange has the appearance of an organism loaded with color and juice, but is in fact only a clockwork toy to be wound by God or the devil, or since it's increasingly replacing both the almighty state.
In the film, we follow a character named Alex, who is a complete psychopath, and he leads a gang of other delinquents he calls the Droogs. This gang goes around committing many acts of violence simply because they can. The story makes it apparent that they do this out of a primitive instinct.
Yeah, the bastardization of the natural is a common theme throughout the movie. Milk is used as a symbol of the foundation of humanity and human nature. However, the milk that is used in the film is laced with various drugs that compels Alex and the Droogs to commit these acts of violence.
Okay, so now to get into the show a little bit. Silhouettes of the pieces are often inspired by the 17th century, and you can especially see the Three Musketeers inspiration in the hats with the feathers. But also, there's a lot of like modern and also like futuristic symbolisms. There's a lot of sportswear and stuff, which kind of ties back into the Edgar Allan Poe theory, because in the collection the pieces are all a mesh of past, present, and future clothing.
It's really interesting to see the perspective shift of the retrofuturistic aesthetic in A Clockwork Orange. It's retrofuturistic in the sense that it is a 1971 film kind of predicting what the future would look like. So it has elements of conformity while still keeping the essence of the 70s. And now we have a collection that is like looking through the other side of the lens. You have the supposed future looking back at the past and seeing how the past interprets our current present.
So masks are used pretty much all throughout the collection. And, it's these kind of Venetian masks that are reminiscent of the 17th century, but also masks are used by Alex and his gang when they commit acts of violence, kind of, to hide themselves and to feel more comfortable committing these acts of violence.
A part of the theory of Edgar Allan Poe being a time traveler is every year on the anniversary of Poe's death, there's a mysterious man who has a Venetian mask very similar to the ones in the collection and in A Clockwork Orange, who leaves 3 red roses and a bottle of brandy on Poe's grave.
We can also see a print of Beethoven on this hoodie. And Beethoven is kind of like Alex's only connection to normality. And he's the only like person, his music's the only thing that grounds him and stops him from committing these acts of violence.
Also, to get into Beethoven, um, throughout the film, like techno music, or I guess kind of techno music, is kind of played throughout the film when he's committing acts of violence. But when Beethoven is played, he kind of snaps out of it and goes back to like hum- humanity and like his human self, and not just like this primitive um, person who is extremely violent.
So for the novel, the author kind of created a language for Alex to use, which is a combination of a bunch of Slavic languages, mainly Russian, and a Cockney British slang, whatever. So for example, this sweater here says trestupnik, which practically means like felon.
I also think the use of canes is very reminiscent of the past, the 17th and 18th, and even the 19th century.
Also, in the film, the droogs would use canes to like
Mm-hmm.
hit people.
Yeah. Horror show is a phrase that is used throughout the film a lot.
Yeah, whenever the droogs would go committing crimes, they would call them the horror show, which kind of, I guess, dehumanizes the acts, making it seem like it is just an act. Here on this hat, we have a hat that's very similar to the ones that Alex and the Droogs wear throughout the film. But as you can see, there is a crown of thorns around it. And religious imagery is used a lot throughout the film. I guess it's kind of a fair assessment to say that Alex is the antithesis of Christ, but his story still kind of follows the format of that of Christ, um, as in he is finally turned over to the state after his friends betray him, and he kind of goes through his own death and rebirth process. Also, Alex reads the Bible throughout the film, so I think it's kind of just a nod at the religious imagery in the film.
And doesn't Alex get like a lot of comfort from the Bible, or he reads the Bible often?
Yeah, yeah.
The 17th century inspiration you can definitely see in things like the feather caps and the canes and all that. But you bring back like these sweaters, these modern day sweaters, but also sweaters that are kind of reminiscent of the 70s. I really like the use of color and color theory throughout this collection. I think the incorporation of knitwear on the jacket is
Mm,
so
it's
interesting.
crazy. I love it. Like
I,
the hiking boots and the knitwear and the jacket.
Yeah. But who's hiking with a clockwork orange gear?
I don't know. I'm kind of
Why
obsessed
not?
with it. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I
Um,
would wear it. There's also a lot of coats and stuff that were a collaboration with Valentino in this collection. And if y'all know me, y'all know I'm a sucker for Pier Paolo.
there's a lot of also images of Alex on pieces in this collection. So here's one when he's in the hospital and kind of doing their little brainwashing thing.
Yeah, you can see him kind of all on these socks that peek out of the boots. So in this scene, Alex is in the hospital, and it's after he tried to kind of snap out of this, um, you know, hypnosis, I would say, of these psychiatric treatments that he's been undergoing. Um, and I kind of see it, in reference with the thorns and what Chloe had said earlier, how Alex is seen kind of as the antithesis of Christ, but still kind of goes through, similar um, themes as Christ. And I think that this is like the turning point for him, and then also, Christ.
As for the rose imagery, um, that might have inspiration from the Edgar Allan Poe theory of the time traveler, because Story goes, every single year on the anniversary of Poe's death, there's a mysterious masked man who wears one of like a Venetian mask, very similar to the ones in this collection, who leaves a singular red rose on his grave. Or no, three red roses on his grave and a bottle of brandy.
So we have 3 roses. So that
Yeah, the three roses.
I think whenever there's a rose on somebody, there's 3 of them. So I wonder. I see these necklaces. They're wearing like utensils. Like there was like a fork and a spoon. I thought they were roses at first, but second look, I realized they were spoons.
This collection is also supposed to be like hiking gear, so I don't know if it's supposed to be like easy, accessible utensils or something, but I think it's neat. I want a spoon.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like it's supposed to be like very commercial. Like if going for presentation, really every piece would be like very wearable.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of see like the future, past, present
Yeah.
references in these ones. Like the shoes being like super like futuristic, and then like the sports gear and the hats and the coats.
Yeah, I really like that like the silhouettes are reminiscent of the past, but then like the patterns and the actual fabrics used are very modern and or futuristic.
Who is that? Some
Is that Alex? I couldn't even tell. It didn't to me it looks like Jack Nicholson.
Although it's never like mentioned in the show notes or anything, this overcoat really reminds me of the one in American Psycho, worn by Patrick Bateman.
So this collection was also a collab with Valentino. And you can see like the V and the U, and in other coats and stuff, you can see a more prominent V and Valentino written on the bottoms and stuff.
This collection might be one of my favorite collabs between designers. So here we have the finale of the collection, which reminds me a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's Masque of the Red Death, which is a book with symbolism of colors, and each room is a different color that represents a different stage of life, the last room being the red room, which is why this is at the end of the collection. And I just remembered that in that room there's a giant clock, which symbols like the time of life, and I guess can also relate back to a clockwork orange. But yeah, I think one thing that's interesting just about the layout of this show is here you have everyone kind of uniform, but in the beginning of the show it was very much like Alex's face everywhere, and Alex and the Droog's like attire, so it kind of follows the story of the film. In the beginning it's Alex, he is contributing to the complete lawlessness. And then eventually he is taken over by the state and kind of forced to conform to everyone else. So you have like his individuality to complete conformity, which is the format of the show. Here they are gathered in this circular formation, and in the collection itself, they kind of like walk around in a circle, which is supposed to be an homage to a scene in the movie where a bunch of prisoners were just walking around in a circle, which is also an homage to Vincent van Gogh's Prisoners Exercising painting.
And that's the collection. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed listening to us talk.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.